She never expected her quiet street to turn into a battlefield. A simple home, a simple life, until the HOA sent a letter that would change everything. One seemingly small complaint spiraled into fines, threats, and whispered judgments from neighbors who once smiled politely. Every knock at the door made her heart race. Every email felt like a trap. And then the day came when the rules themselves seemed to turn against her, exposing scars she thought only she knew. How far would people go to assert control over someone else's life? And what happens when standing up comes at a terrifying cost? Her mornings used to begin with the gentle hum of lawn mowers and the scent of freshly baked bread drifting from her neighbors' kitchens. Emily had moved to Maplewood Heights seeking calm streets, friendly faces, and a place where her little family could grow without worry. Her home was modest, but filled with sunlight, laughter, and the faint tang of lavender from her garden. Children played along the sidewalks, neighbors waved from porches, and weekend barbecues filled the air with smoke and music. Emily prided herself on keeping her property neat, trimmed hedges, freshly painted fences, and flowers spilling over the stone walkway. She wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, and avoided drama wherever possible. But even in a seemingly perfect neighborhood, small cracks could grow into walls of conflict. The HOA seemed harmless enough at first. Newsletters with reminders about lawn heights, occasional emails about parking rules. But the first time Emily received a subtle note questioning the aesthetic harmony of her unit's small garden sculpture, she felt a twinge of unease. It was just a tiny concern, easily dismissed. Yet a seed had been planted. Somewhere in the shadows of neighborly politeness and community regulations, something was brewing. Rules that could turn minor choices into major headaches, and neighbors who might take offense at the smallest imperfection. As Emily sipped her morning coffee, watching sunlight spill across her porch, she had no idea that the life she loved was about to collide with an authority that thrived on control, and that every small decision about her home would soon feel like a battle she never asked for. It started small. A subtle note slipped under the door, the kind that felt almost polite. Your garden sculpture does not align with community standards. Emily laughed it off at first, brushing it aside as an overzealous attempt to maintain appearances. But then another notice arrived, this one more formal, stamped with the HOA logo and an official tone. Immediate correction required or fines will apply. Her pulse quickened as she scanned the document. It was vague, referencing community aesthetic without explanation. She tried to call the HOA office, but the receptionist was curt, and the board members refused to return her calls. Soon, Emily noticed subtle glances from neighbors. The couple across the street, who had once waved cheerfully, now whispered as she walked by. A note appeared on her windshield one morning. Fix your home or face consequences. Weeks passed, and the notices piled up, each one carrying heavier fines, each more absurd than the last. A single cracked brick on her walkway became a violation. Her fence, perfectly painted last summer, was suddenly non-compliant. The HOA seemed to delight in finding faults where none existed. Soon, Emily noticed subtle glances from neighbors. The couple across the street, who had once waved cheerfully, now whispered as she walked by. A note appeared on her windshield one morning. Fix your home or face consequences. Weeks passed, and the notices piled up, each one carrying heavier fines, each more absurd than the last. A single cracked brick on her walkway became a violation. Her fence, perfectly painted last summer, was suddenly non-compliant. The HOA seemed to delight in finding faults where none existed. Then came the confrontation at the annual HOA meeting. Emily arrived hoping for dialogue, only to find herself on the receiving end of thinly veiled accusations. Board members questioned her judgment, her taste, even her commitment to the community. Voices rose, neighbors chimed in, and what had started as a small dispute over a garden sculpture became a public spectacle. Her heart pounded as the room filled with murmurs and pointed looks. Her determination grew alongside her frustration. Emily began researching HOA laws, discovering obscure clauses and loopholes that the board had twisted to their advantage. She reached out to neighbors quietly, testing who might stand with her. Finally, she stood before the board, documentation in hand, calmly citing every misapplied rule and exposing the hidden clause that invalidated the fines. One by one, their arguments collapsed. Murmurs turned into nods. Authority cracked. The final confrontation ended not with shouting, but with resignation. The fines were rescinded, notices withdrawn, and the board promised more transparent enforcement going forward. Emily had won. But beyond the immediate victory, she had reshaped the neighborhood dynamic, showing that rules exist to serve the community, not to control it arbitrarily. After weeks of mounting pressure, Emily finally decided to act. She had spent countless nights poring over HOA bylaws, documenting every interaction, and quietly reaching out to neighbors who might support her. It had been exhausting, emotionally, mentally, and financially, but the fire of determination in her chest refused to dim. For the first time, she realized that victory wasn't about winning a single battle. It was about reclaiming control over her life, her home, and her dignity. Slowly, life returned to normal. The garden bloomed freely, decorations went up without fear, and neighbors greeted one another with genuine smiles. Emily's persistence inspired others in the community to pay closer attention to the HOA's actions. Residents who had long felt powerless began attending meetings, asking questions, and documenting interactions. The culture of fear that had once pervaded the neighborhood shifted toward awareness and accountability. Emily became, without seeking it, a quiet leader in the community, a symbol that even in the face of petty bureaucracy, one person's determination could spark meaningful change. Months later, Emily often paused on her porch, sipping coffee in the morning sunlight, reflecting on how far she had come. The memory of harassment and intimidation lingered, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it served as a reminder that resilience, preparation, and quiet courage could dismantle even the most entrenched power dynamics. And the final question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. When the rules are meant to control you, how far would you go to reclaim your life?